Welcome back, fellow Illumineers, to be our guest. It is that time. We are doing our set review videos for Whispers in the Well, Lorcana's newest set. We're doing our limited draft and sealed set reviews so that you can all feel prepared and confident to crush your release weekend events and hopefully well beyond that. It is nearing 12 hours before I fly out again for the whole week before release, so we got to get cracking with these. I've got 2 more videos to record and 3 more to edit. All right. So, without further ado, we're going to get into these 5-drop videos. Actually, no, we're going to have a little bit longer ado, which is to say thank you all, as always, for your support. It's amazing that I can disappear for months on end, come back with a few videos, and you're all so wonderful in supporting it, supporting me, and in your comments, in sharing it. All of that good stuff. We're up over 1,000 subscribers. Don't think I've forgotten that, by the way. I had a plan to recognize and to celebrate that, but unfortunately, I tend to get obsessed with doing things exactly the way that I had planned them, and that plan has fallen through, and so I have no plan B. So I am going to be finding a way to celebrate that with you all, and to recognize it and to thank you all. But I need to come up with plan B. So if anyone's got any ideas, excellent. Well, let's cut the ado there, and let's cut it over to Past Heath, the star of the show, for our ranking breakdown. Take it away. So we're going to do A, B, C, D, F as our rating system. A is first pickable and happy to first pick it. This is a bomb or just a really effective card. There are commons that are absolutely within this territory, but ultimately it's something that you're just like, you open your pack, you look at it and you're like, yeah, this is the one for me. Love this one. Happy to have it, right? That's an A. B is, I'll first pick it, but I'm not going to be absolutely thrilled about it, but I'm definitely very happy to pick this up and have this in my deck. I will always play this card, and I'm going to kind of be picking it in the first half of the pack. C's are your, like, journeyman staples of your deck. You're almost always going to play these cards unless you've drafted so well that your deck's just crammed full of A's and B's. So you're always going to play these cards, or almost always. But you're not exactly thrilled to be taking them. You're just like, okay, these are cards that are going to fill out my deck, right? These are the cards that you want kind of in the middle to last half of the pack, and they're solid. D is, ideally, I'd like to not have this in my deck. I will play this, but I'd like to not have this in my deck if I can help it, and I'm certainly not wasting any early picks on it. These are cards that you are going to be picking up because it's the only cards left in the last third of the pack, right? Ideally, these should all be inkable. If they're that bad, you should not be taking an uninkable card that's that quality, right? And then F is don't play it. And usually that's because they're uninkable and they're like D quality and uninkable. But it could also, there could be some inkable cards that I rate as S just because they're so bad. And in that case, obviously, if they're inkable and you need ink, you're going to play them in your deck because you're only eliminating 8 cards that you drafted. So if you have, 8 uninkables that are Fs, you're going to play an F that's inkable, of course, right? But you should try never to have this anywhere near your deck, and you should only be using it as ink if I've got an inkable F in there. And we're back. All right, let's jump into these. We've got some pretty good cards in the 5-drop slots, so let's get cracking. We're starting here with blue Carefree Berries, an inkable 4/5, 2 lore, shift 3. When you play this character, choose one. Each player draws a card, or each player chooses and discards a card. Now, we've already established that our former stat lines for vanillas we can no longer count on. Things have gotten stronger. You'll see here shortly how they have. So with that being said, if our previous vanilla stat line was 5/5, 2 lore for 5, and we're below even that, that means we've taken a bit of a step back here. So we better hope the ability makes up for it. So how do we feel about each player drawing a card or each player choosing and discarding a card? Obviously, if we've got no cards left in the hand and our opponent has 1, we feel good about that. On 5, that's not necessarily going to be the case. On on the play on turn 6, you'll likely be playing your last card while your opponent will have a card left in hand. On turn 5, you should still have a card left in your hand and your opponent should have 2. So you probably don't want to be discarding your last card and making them discard one of the worst of their 2 remaining cards. And each player drawing a card isn't really a net benefit to either. And in fact, depending on how you've drafted your deck or built your deck, you might be benefiting your opponent more than yourself. That's probably not worth factoring in. You should just assume that it just means that there's no net benefit or detraction from each of you drawing a card. So when the discard's kind of off where we want to have it, I mean, obviously we could sandbag this for a turn and potentially play this on 6, and then maybe not so bad. But I usually want to curve out, so I probably want to be playing a 6-drop on turn 6. So with all that being said, I would rate this as a D. I think that there's times where it will be usable, and it's not an awful body, but it's not something that I'm actively looking at. Broadway, inkable 4/6 2-lore bodyguard with the Stone by Day ability. Now we're getting to the point, now of the 5-drops, where the Stone by Day really shouldn't be a factor. Because on turn 6, chances are we're running out of cards. So we're exerting him, and then by turn 7, when we go to ready him, shouldn't be a problem. I mean, I guess technically you're readying him on turn 6 since he's a bodyguard. So Broadway is a unique one. He's almost like a 4-drop in terms of that Stone by Day. So he might get stuck for a turn. But as a bodyguard, that's probably where we want him anyway. We're missing out on the 2 lore, so that's not irrelevant, right? But not the end of the world for him to be stuck for a turn if that's the worst case scenario. So effectively what we've done is we've gained 1 willpower over our previous our previous Monterey Jack, the 4/5 2-lore bodyguard. We've gained a willpower, and the offset of that is the Stone by Day ability. So arguably this is worse than those relative to their sets because the stat lines have gone up for the sets, right? So I would expect just a 4/6 2-lore bodyguard for 5 without the Stone by Day ability now, given that our stat lines have gone up in this set. So the fact that he's got the Stone by Day is a bit of a detractor, but again, at 5-drop, that's not really relevant. So all that amounts to, I would normally give this bodyguard like an A- in previous sets, right? The Monterey Jack was always effectively an A-. So I think this now lands in more of the B+ territory. It's not quite as strong as it used to be, still very solid, but we got to factor in, for example, hey, let's look at this. We've got a 5-drop 6/7. That is going to rip through Broadway, right? So we got to factor in, because it used to be our 5-drops with 1 lore were 6/5s or 5/6, right? Now we've got a 6/7. Oh no, what have I become? No. I blame my daughter. She was 7 years old, and she was saying that all today. So a 5-drop 6/7, 1 lore is really exceptional value, right? Really good stat lines for the cost. Now, again, relative to the rest of the set, it's kind of on par with the 5/6, the 6/5, right? The rest of the set has been boosted up. We've got a 4-drop 5/5, 4-drop 4/6 Challenger 2, right? So a 5-drop 6/7 isn't out of the realm of what we should expect, but it's still a big body, right? So for me, this is probably in that C+ territory. Above where I would have had the 5/6 or 6/5 before, but not much bigger because everything's gotten bigger, right? Coldstone, reincarnated cyborg. He's an uninkable 5/4 2-lore. When you play this character, if you have 2 or more gargoyle characters in your discard, gain 2 lore. So you not only have to have a large amount of gargoyles, which there aren't really that many of, especially at common and uncommon, but they've got to be banished and in the discard. No. Right? So 5/5 2-lore is our vanilla stat line. It's below even that, and the possibility of that coming is relatively low. It's an F for me. Not wasting an uninkable slot on that. All right. We've got another one of these champions. We've got Daisy Duck Sapphire Champion, 5/6 an inkable 5/6/1 lore. Your other Sapphire characters gain resist +1, and whenever one of your other Sapphire characters' quests, you may look at the top card of your deck, put it on either the top or the bottom of your deck. As I mentioned, it is not likely that you're going to have many others of the same colors. Chances are you're going to have a bit of a rainbow. But there's a decent possibility, especially by turn 5, that you have maybe one other. So we're effectively losing, versus our 6/7 that we just saw, we're effectively losing 1 strength and 1 willpower. For that, we're potentially gaining resist 1 and filtering for our Sapphire character. But those are kind of in contradiction of each other. The second ability wants you to quest, and the first ability kind of wants you to challenge. Right? Yes, the resist 1 helps you survive, but I'd much rather use the resist 1 to challenge into something that I would normally trade with and survive than just hope that it means that I can quest and survive a little bit easier. So as a result, I think that it's borderline playable. I would probably rather this than Baloo, so C-, but I'm not going to be afraid to dump it into the D+ territory. Dragonfire. Oh, I have always loved this card in Limited. I say this pretty much every set. I wish they would just reprint this every set solely for Limited, because we kind of really need a release valve for potential bonds, and we normally don't get them. It is uninkable action, simple and straightforward. Banish chosen character. What more can you like about it? What more can you ask for, right? Yes, it is uninkable, but this is absolutely worth an uninkable slot. Whether you use it for tempo and just get rid of your opponent's biggest threat, or whether you desperately need it to get rid of your opponent's bomb, great. Absolutely great and absolutely worth using. You might not even use it on turn 5. If you've got enough cards to hold off on it, go, 2, 3, 4, or 5, and if you're really lucky, into 6-drop, and then maybe turn 7, drop this on their biggest threat. But pretty much no matter which turn you use it in, you're probably going to feel really good about it. This is an A- for me. Gazelle, Ballad Singer, uninkable 3/8/1 lore, Singer 7, doesn't matter. When you play this character, you may put a song card from your discard to the top of your deck. I don't even get to draw it. That's just awful. This is an F. I would rather Mighty 5/4/2 lore than this. Thank you very much. Genie, Investigative Mind, inkable 4/7/2 lore, and Detective for what it's worth. Yeah, really solid stats. We're losing 2 strength off the Cauldron Born for the equivalent of getting 1 lore. I really like the 7 willpower on a 2 lore character, especially for 5 costs. That's going to survive really well into probably questing at least twice, and probably going to do some good damage on the crackback when someone does try to eliminate it. So yeah, like it, dig it, very happy with that. I would probably put it equivalent to the Cauldron Born. It just serves a different purpose, right? It's a C+. Your Cauldron Born is going to be the one you're going to want to be challenging with. Genie, you're going to want to be questing with, but they both serve a really good purpose. Again, my ethos is always be the threat than have the answer to the threat. So I would rather the 4/7/2 lore to be questing at that point than the 6/7 body that's going to be removing my opponent's questing characters. But it's also good to have a balance. If you've got a lot of questing characters, you need some bodies to offset that, right? Because whether you're on the play or on the draw, you need to be able to adapt your play style to that, and your deck needs to be able to adapt to that. Goofy, Emerald Champion, uninkable 3/5/2 lore. When one of your other Emerald characters is challenged and banished, banish the challenging character. Your other Emerald characters gain ward. An uninkable 3/5/2 lore is really bad. Again, you're not likely to have many other Emerald characters on the board, maybe 1. Giving them ward doesn't matter. The first ability is really all that matters. If it was all your characters, if any of these champions were all of your characters, including the champion themselves, that would be one thing, right? If he had the Kuzco ability, we'd be talking about something different. But he gives it to other characters, so you got to hope that you have another Emerald character to go with this. Please don't draft this and then start drafting Emerald characters heavily and then losing out on value because of that. This is another F. Okay. We need paging Stephen Gettle. We need the pronunciation guide again. Gwythaint? I'm definitely pronouncing with a th. That's for sure. Gwythaint. Inkable 4/3/2 lore evasive. Whenever this character quests, each opponent chooses and exerts one of their ready characters. That's fantastic. Now, notably, this trades with every single evasive and alert character that exists. So if your opponent has an answer for this, they're going to have an answer that will trade with this. There's not, well, actually, sorry, that's not true. Peter Pan is the only thing that doesn't trade with this. So there is one evasive character that doesn't trade with this. But there's so few answers to evasives that I'm not going to ding this too much as a result. A 4/3/2 lore evasive body, already fantastic, right? It's evading all of the 2 damage or less removal, so that's a great start. Evasive, really hard to deal with. And then the fact that it can be used aggressively as well. So I would want to draft some bodies around this or put some bodies in my deck around this so that this can be my quester, and then the exert ability can allow my bigger bodies to challenge into their characters before they can quest. I really like this combination. Where do I have it at? I think I had this probably in the A- territory, maybe B+. What do I have it at? A-, yeah. And I'm happy with that. I really like Dragonfire, so I'm probably putting it below Dragonfire, but well, the ink ability might put it above Dragonfire. They're both quite good, so I wouldn't worry too much about which one there. Just what does your deck need? If it's pick one, pack one, again, I'd rather be the threat than have the answer to the threat, so I'm probably taking Gwythaint there. But if it's getting, pack 2 and beyond, and I know I need removal, great. And I've got plenty of threats, great, take Dragonfire above it. Hades, looking for a deal. Inkable 3/4/1 lore. When you play this character, you may choose an opposing character. If you do, draw 2 cards unless that character puts that card on the bottom of their deck. Effectively, you give your opponent a choice. Remove your best character or give me 2 cards. In limited, you're happy either way. Leaving a 3/4 body behind, fantastic, right? So again, a 3-cost 3/4 is no longer the vanilla stat line, so you're paying like 2 and change for this body, for this effect, rather, because the body's worth a little bit less than 3 ink, so you're paying 2 and change for this effect, which is really good. You're happy either way, right? 2 ink and change to either banish your opponent's best character or draw 2 cards. Great. There's no bad answers here. Now, it is letting your opponent, 1, put themselves to a skill test, but 2, make the best choice for them and thus the worst choice for you. But there's really no bad choices here. So for me, that's tough. I have it as B+, but thinking about it, I wonder if it might be above these or in the same field at least. I think I'm going to put it at A-, but I think I'm going to put it at low A-. Just because, chances are they're going to let you draw 2 cards. So if I'm thinking of this as 5-cost, 3/4, draw 2 cards, that's very good. Is it above A-? If it was a 3/4/2 lore, absolutely. A 3/4/1 lore, by the time you're on turn 5+, that's not going to have a huge consequence. There's not really much that we care to be singing. I think I'm happy with A-, but again, I'm not going to fault you for taking it higher than that. And let's be honest, you're going to take it higher than that because it's worth more. But I like to think in a vacuum, right? If you're playing a simulator, what would you take? Hookhand, unexpectedly friendly, inkable 6/5/2 lore. This is one of the bodies I've referred to where the stat lines are getting up. So now we're giving up, instead of 2 strength, we're giving up 2 willpower for the 2 lore versus Genie. But it all kind of amounts to the same thing, which is in that C+ territory. What do you need? I think in terms of a 2 willpower character, I'd probably rather the 4 strength and the 7 willpower, 2 lore character. I'd probably rather the 4 strength and the 7 willpower because that's going to likely survive to quest twice. Whereas in theory, my opponent could run their 4-drop Goliath into Hookhand. But if that's worst case scenario, that's not too bad. Lady Tremaine, Sinister Socialite. Uninkable 5/4/2 lore with boost 2. Whenever this character quests, if you put a card under her this turn, It's got to be this turn. You may play an action with cost 5 or less from your discard for free, and put that action on the bottom of your deck instead of your discard. Obviously, that's not going to be terribly relevant. Yes, if you got Dragonfire, you're going to feel really good about this. But most of the time, you're not going to have Dragonfire to pair with her. So, I mean, she's got to kind of be... Yeah. Wow, Penumbra got out of order. I hate to put her in an F when Dragonfire is common, but like the likelihood of those two lining up are so slim. If you happen to have 3 Dragonfire and she is your 4th uninkable, because you don't want to have more than that if you've got 4 or 5 drop uninkables, then maybe she becomes worth considering for consistency, but she's just consistently going to do nothing. Magica De Spell. She is an uninkable 3/6 2 lore when you, or she's an inkable rather, 3/6 2 lore. When you put a card under one of your characters or locations, you may move 1 damage from chosen character to chosen opposing character. 1 damage isn't much once we're into the 5 drops, and you're not boosting much at all. So she is not anything more than a vanilla. So a 3/6 vanilla is way below rate at this point. She's in that kind of blue territory. Isn't it crazy how many Magica De Spells there are, by the way, relative to some other characters? Yeah, she's cool, but like, there's so many Magica De Spells in this game. Somebody's got a fetish. I mean, what? Nick Wilde, Persistent Investigator, uninkable, 5/4, 2 lore, detective, with shift 3, probably don't shift. During your turn, whenever one of your detective characters banishes another character in a challenge, draw a card. This is the mother of all payoffs for detectives, right? This is what you might want to draft detectives a little higher for. That is a great ability, even just by himself, which is where we're probably going to rate him. We're not going to give him much credit for having other detectives because it's kind of hit and miss whether there's other detectives worth having. Genie, probably the best of them that we've seen so far, other than Nick. But just on his own, right? 5/4, 2 lore. I mean, the 2 lore is tough because you don't really care about the lore if you're trying to challenge and banish. I wish this was a 6/5, 1 lore with this ability, but beggars can't be choosers. Yeah, I like that. There's a good chance that you're going to take something out, draw a card, and have something else challenged in and trade with this. So you're effectively getting a 3-for-1 out of it. If he was uninkable, he would be, or if he was inkable, I keep switching these up. If he was inkable, he might be at the top of this list. Being uninkable, I'm probably going to put him... Is he that worse than Dragonfire, though? Oh. Maybe not. I'm reassessing all of my B pluses here. Nah, he's uninkable, right? Right? Uh, I think if it was a 4/5, 2 lore, or a 6/5 or 5/6, 1 lore, he would be right up there. I think as a 5/4, especially with the 4 damage action song floating around, I think I'm going to leave him at B+. But that's tough. Penumbra. Someone tell me in the comments where the heck this is from. I cannot figure this out for the life of me. I'm assuming it's like the Lilo and Stitch alien, like when they're in space or something, but I have no idea. It doesn't look like Lilo and Stitch animation. But it doesn't look like Black Cauldron or anything like that either. I don't know. I have no idea where this is from. Penumbra, Moon Alien, uninkable 7/6 2 lore. So we're effectively getting 1 strength and 1 willpower over Hook Hand here, but uninkable instead. The higher the ink cost, as I mentioned, the more risk there is with it being uninkable. If this was a 6/7, I would feel much better about it. If it was a 5/8, I'd feel better. If it was a 4/9, I would be out of this world. It is not. So I got to ding a little bit. 7 strength just really doesn't matter. Like, there's just no time where you really need 7 strength. unless you're trying to take out one of those 7 willpower locations in one swing, and you shouldn't really care about that. So this might as well be a 6/6. It's still good, but I don't know if it's like significantly better than these ones here, right? Is it really accomplishing much more than these here? Probably a little bit. Maybe I should move it. I've got it as C plus. Maybe I should move it into B minus territory, but I don't even know if I'm willing to do that. Again, 5-drop uninkables you got to be more wary about. I would so much rather Nick Wilde than this. I'm going to leave it in C plus for now. Let's see where the rest of the cards take us. Okay. Pluto, Steel Champion, Inkable, 5/5, 2 lore. During your turn, whenever one of your other Steel characters banishes another character in a challenge, gain 2 lore. And when you play another Steel character, you may banish chose none. So let's ignore the second part. Okay, so this is the old vanilla stat line. So this is already kind of in a C minus territory just by itself. But it's still in C minus territory all by itself. The banish gain 2 lore ability is probably the most relevant other than Mini's draw a card. But this one you get to be proactive about. Mini, you got to rely on your opponent challenging your characters. This one, you can play him, challenge and banish another character with another Steel character and immediately get the payoff. So Pluto is probably the best of the champions so far. Still relying on this working is doing the thing other than being his vanilla self is probably suspect, but I still think he's in a C territory. All right, Rapunzel, Creative Captor, Inkable, 3/6, 2 lore. When you play this character, chosen opposing character gets -3 strength until the end of turn. Now we're talking. Okay, so we've got below the vanilla stat line. So on her own, she's a D+, right? But the -3 strength, now that's enough where we're starting to see some payoff here. -3 strength, you can do some real good challenging and not pay much of a price. So I'm happy with Rapunzel. I don't think she's fantastic. I think she's probably in a C plus territory, kind of a low. Yeah, I would say a low C plus to a C. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Somewhere in there. All right, there's some really good vanilla bodies here. So it's hard to compete with those. All right, now this is the strength adjuster we're looking for. Scar Eerily Prepared. Uninkable, 6/5, 2 lore, boost 2. Whenever you put a card under this character, each opposing character, chosen opposing, oh my goodness, could you imagine if it was each? Chosen opposing character gets -5 strength this turn. So already he's equivalent to Hook Hand. He's uninkable, but he's equivalent in terms of body, right? We're determined that Penumbra, we're pretty much at that anyway. Like, it's basically a 6/6, right? However, the ability to, once per turn, give your opponent -5 strength, give a character -5 strength, you're going to be wrecking house. I would almost want to play this turn 7 if I get up to 7 ink, if I'm drawing enough cards to get up to 7 ink, and I can drop this and boost right in the same turn, and then just continue to every turn. Your opponent basically can't exert their characters once you've got this on the board. It's like your strongest character is now 0 strength or 1 strength. Like, rough. If this was on play and only once, it would still be solid, but it wouldn't necessarily be exceptional because the timing of it matters, right? The reason I didn't like the ones that are on play as much, the reason I'm not like thrilled about Rapunzel is if I want this body on the board, but there isn't a situation where the minus strength is going to help me this turn, well, then I'm in a bit of a conundrum, right? I'm not going to get the value out of it. Whereas Scar, you can just wait on boosting it for when you will get value out of the strength modifier. And again, you can do it every turn, once per turn. So that is exceptional. I think I've got him in the B plus territory just because of him being uninkable and it being 7 ink to get to that point to have the body and get the strength modifier. The fact that you can keep doing it again and again is fantastic. Both Nick Wilde and Scar effectively do the same thing, which is to say it makes your opponent stop and consider whether it's worth them exerting their characters. Scar probably does it a little bit better. Scuttle, bird-brained, inkable, 5/5, 2 lore with ward. We've established ward doesn't really matter. It becomes a lot more relevant the higher the ink cost is, right? Your opponent's much more likely to want to Dragonfire your Scuttle than your 2-drop, right? So the higher the ink cost, the more ward becomes relevant, but there's just not enough, even with at common. There's not going to be enough Dragonfires in your draft pool for it to be that relevant, but it's not irrelevant, right? It's just mostly irrelevant. So we've already established that this body is kind of in the C- territory. The ward doesn't really give it much. You know, I might bump it above Daisy Duck here. All right. Taran, Pigkeeper, inkable, 5/5, 2 lore. I missed this the first time I read it. With support. Whenever this character quests, you may return a character named Henwen from your discard to your hand. You shouldn't be playing Henwen, so ignore that part. But a 5/5, 2 lore support. Okay, so +5 strength on quest. Cool, my 2-drop's taking out your 6-drop. All right. Yeah. So support obviously gets better the bigger the character is. So on its own, without support, it's a C-. Adding support, what does that make it? You might end up getting to quest with this twice, especially if your 2-drop's taking out their 5 or 6-drop. Again, much like Scar and Nick, this is going to make it so your opponent's characters don't necessarily want to turn sideways. What do I have this as? I've got it as a B-, and I think I'm happy with that, you know? Like, basically getting 1 less strength than Hookhand, but pumping your opponent's your character by 5, that's big game. All right, Headless Horseman, Terror of Sleepy Hollow, uninkable, 4/2, 2 lore. When you play this character, banish chosen opposing character with 2 strength or less. During your turn, whenever an opposing character is banished, each of your characters gets +1 strength this turn. So effectively, the second ability is more likely to trigger than the first, which is to say 2 strength or less, they definitely exist, right? Taking out a Scrooge McDuck, that 2-drop that's going to be super annoying, for example, you're going to feel real good about that. And if you do trigger it, or if you don't, and you challenge into your opponents and banish 1 character, and then the rest of yours get +1 strength, like the +1 strength's going to matter a little bit. You know, maybe 2 characters, maybe 3 get pumped up by 1 strength. That's not nothing. But for a 5-cost uninkable, getting a 4/2, 2 lore body left behind, this isn't constructed. I've got this between C and F, and I haven't been able to decide. This is where I like having someone to discuss things back and forth with, because that can help me make up my mind sometimes. I think it's an F. I think it's probably not you're not gonna hit that banish ability frequently enough that it's gonna be worth paying the 5-cost uninkable for a 4/2, 2 lore. If you can banish something and you're left with a 4/2, 2 lore, especially if you banish something good, you know, something that's just like offset it being a 0 strength to 2 strength by some other great ability, right? Then maybe, but all right, Tinkerbell, Temperamental Fairy, inkable, 5/3, 1 lore with shift 3. You shouldn't shift her. When you play this character, exert chosen opposing character with strength 2 or less. Significantly worse than the Headless Horseman. The body is the same or, well, about the same or worse. The ability is considerably worse. Yes, it's inkable, but this is like an inkable F for me. We'll put it in D because there isn't much Ds, but like, it's not very good. All right, potentially the best card in the set. Just draft this and you'll be fine. Just to open this in your seal pool and you'll be fine. Ursula, Whisper of Vanessa, inkable, 4/5, 2 lore with boost 1. While there's a card under her, she gets +1 lore and evasive. So she's a 6-cost on layaway, 5/1 for a 4/5, 3 lore evasive. Keeping in mind, no other evasives have more than 4 strength, which means there's no other evasives that can take her. That's not true. There's a 7-drop that can. Whether you get that out or not. By the time you have, she's quested for 6. Like, Yeah, she's an A+. Why am I even lingering on this? All right. Thank you all for checking out this video. Yeah, a pretty good balance of 5 drops. I wouldn't hesitate to put Scar and Nick up into the A- as well. We could have 6 in the A's in 5. So 5 is very strong. What should we take away from that? We probably don't need to prioritize 5 drops as much, but the thing to keep in mind is 4 of those are rare plus. So we've just got Gwythaint and Dragonfire that are common or uncommon. So when I say don't prioritize 5 as much, within reason, right? So for example, our 3 drops, we were light on powerful 3 drops. There was a high volume of them, but we were light on powerful 3 drops. So we could say, I want to prioritize those so I get the best ones and deprioritize 5 drops because I could get some solid ones at a bunch with a bunch of different cards. But the flip side of that is there's not nearly as many 5 drops as there are 3 drops. So it's hard to say. I think that on the whole, I would probably deprioritize 5 drops because even if I'm just getting Taran and Broadways as my 5 drops, that's not too bad, right? If I can get a Dragonfire, if I can get Gwythaint in there, great. Obviously, if I'm cracking Ursula or Hades, I'm just taking them. But if I had Scar and Nick Wilde in my pack and I had something in a ink cost that wasn't quite as good, but I was low on, this is pack 3 or something, and I've got plenty of 5s, then keep that in mind, right? All right. Thank you all for checking out. Again, thank you for supporting these videos. If you love Limited, if you want to see it grow, please share it out. Spread the love. Share it with your family and friends. Let them know about it so that they can feel confident playing it. Because the more that you've got people around you that are confident, the more they're going to push you to be better. And also the more likely they're going to enjoy it as well. And hopefully keep giving you opportunities to play Unlimited. We'll check you out next time for our last set review video. And then we're going to have one more video after that, which will be our quick hits, just for your kind of, hey, quick refresher before your release event. Thank you all again. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.